Most people believe that confidence is an innate trait, something you either have or don't have. They grow up hearing phrases like, "Some are born confident, others are not," and internalize the idea that this quality is a fixed personality trait. But modern psychology, through the discoveries of Albert Bandura, has revealed something deeply unsettling. Confidence is not an immutable essence, but a psychological construct shaped by experiences, interpretations, and above all, internal beliefs. And the most disturbing, and most overlooked, is that a lack of confidence not only silently sabotages our actions, but also affects how the world responds to us. Albert Bandura dedicated decades to studying the human mind and formulated a revolutionary concept called self-efficacy. Unlike self-esteem, which is a general assessment of personal worth, self-efficacy pertains to the specific belief that one is capable of successfully performing certain actions, and this belief has a destructive or liberating power, depending on how it is built or neglected. Bandura identified that self-efficacy functions as a self-fulfilling prophecy. People who believe they are incapable, even without realizing it, sabotage their own attempts, avoid risks, give up more quickly in the face of obstacles, and when they fail, attribute the failure to a supposed permanent personal deficiency. But what makes this even more alarming is what Bandura called the involuntary communication of doubt. Individuals with low self-efficacy constantly transmit signals of uncertainty in their tone of voice, body posture, pauses between words, and in their gaze that avoids direct confrontation. These signals are subtly, almost invisibly picked up by the environment, and the people around them, even unintentionally, begin to reflect this disbelief back. This means that when someone does not believe in themselves, they not only harm themselves internally, but also train others not to believe in them. A lack of confidence becomes a dirty mirror that distorts all social interactions. This dynamic creates a vicious cycle that is almost impossible to perceive but profoundly real. Personal disbelief generates insecurity. Insecurity alters behavior. Behavior influences how others respond. These responses reinforce the original disbelief. And thus, silently, a person's reality begins to shape around a lie they have learned to believe. I am not capable. In this video, we will deeply explore what Albert Bandura really discovered about confidence, why most people are trapped in an invisible cycle of self-sabotage, and how getting out of it requires much more than positive thinking. It requires strategic action, shifts in perception, and a complete reinterpretation of what it means to believe in oneself. If you have ever felt stuck, invisible, underestimated, or ignored, it may not be because the world is unfair. It may be because, without realizing it, you are conveying to the world that you do not deserve to be taken seriously. But this can be changed, and it all starts with understanding how self-efficacy works, and why no one will believe in you more than you believe in yourself. For a long time, psychology was marked by a mistaken but widely accepted belief that confidence was a fixed personality trait, genetically determined, like eye color or height. Confident people, according to this outdated view, were born with a kind of natural inner strength, a characteristic that simply made them walk firmly, speak with conviction, and face challenges with courage. Those who showed insecurity, hesitation, or fear were considered weak of spirit, as if they had been condemned by biology or some emotional developmental flaw. But this narrative was deconstructed by one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, Albert Bandura. What Bandura revealed to the world was more than a theory. It was a radical shift in how we understand human behavior. He demonstrated that confidence is not a gift, but a learned belief. This belief does not arise from nowhere. nor is it sustained by empty repetitions like, believe in yourself. True confidence arises from self-efficacy, the conviction that you are capable of executing specific actions to achieve concrete goals. In other words, you don't need to believe that you are good at everything. You need to believe that you can handle what is in front of you. And here is the central point. This belief can be built. Bandura showed that people develop or destroy their self-efficacy throughout life, based on the experiences they accumulate. When someone successfully completes a challenging task, even if small, their brain registers it as evidence of competence. When they observe another similar person succeeding, it reinforces the belief that it is also possible for them. When they receive sincere and specific feedback from someone trustworthy, their sense of capability solidifies. And when they learn to interpret physical signals, like butterflies in the stomach or sweaty palms, not as fear, but as energy mobilized for action, they begin to feel more prepared to face difficult situations. The impact of this discovery was immense. It meant, in practical terms, that anyone can systematically develop confidence. And more importantly, that the absence of confidence is not a destiny, but a symptom, a reflection of misinterpreted experiences, unprocessed failures, or contexts that gradually undermine the belief that one is capable. This understanding dismantles the idea that some people just weren't born for this. No one is born knowing how to speak in public, lead a team, assert themselves firmly, or make tough decisions. These are skills developed through practice, exposure, and the gradual building of self-efficacy. The problem is that most people have never been taught to cultivate this process and end up living an entire life trapped in a learned sense of incapacity. But there is a dark side to this story, because just as self-efficacy can be built, it can also be destroyed, slowly, silently, and deeply harmfully. And when that happens, the mind begins to work against you. Thus emerges the invisible cycle of self-sabotage, where each failed attempt is not interpreted as part of the learning process, but as a confirmation of your supposed incompetence. And this is exactly what we will explore in the next part. How the lack of self-efficacy creates a cycle of disbelief that sabotages your behaviors, influences your decisions, and silently shapes your reality, until you become a prisoner of your own distorted self-image. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Most people do not realize when they are trapped in a cycle of self-sabotage. Not because they are weak or incapable, but because this process operates stealthily, disguised as prudence, perfectionism, or humility. The root of this cycle lies in the perception of self-efficacy, more specifically, in its absence. What Albert Bandura identified is that low self-efficacy is not just a negative thought about oneself, but an entire system of beliefs, interpretations, and behaviors that mutually reinforce each other day after day until the person's very identity reconfigures around the idea that they are not capable. It all starts with a silent belief: I won't succeed. This belief seems small, but it distorts everything that comes after. When facing a challenge, the individual does not see it as an opportunity for growth, but as a threat. This changes how they act. They avoid exposure, procrastinate, underestimate their own ideas, or deliver only the bare minimum to not fail. And the result? Failure, or at the very least, performance below their true potential. This outcome is then interpreted as confirmation of the initial belief. See, I knew I wasn't good enough, and this is the critical point. The mind does not register the context, nor the effort, nor the possible learning. It only registers the evidence that validates the narrative of incompetence. And so, like a snake swallowing its own tail, the cycle repeats. Each new attempt becomes more hesitant, more timid, more doomed to failure. Self-sabotage ceases to be an isolated behavior and becomes a way of operating in the world. Bandura observed that this pattern is especially devastating because it does not only affect what the person does, but how they are perceived by others. This happens because the signs of doubt, which often the person themselves does not even realize they are emitting, are extremely visible to those around them. A gaze that avoids eye contact, a voice that falters mid-sentence, a body that shrinks in response to a difficult question, pauses, excuses, hesitations. All of this composes a silent language that communicates a clear message to the world. I don't believe in myself. And the world responds to that message. Bosses, colleagues, partners, clients, everyone begins to adjust their expectations, their respect, and their trust based on these signals. Not out of cruelty, but out of instinct. People respond to the energy they receive. When someone conveys doubt, the chances of being devalued, interrupted, disregarded, or even rejected increase drastically. What seemed to be an internal problem, lack of confidence, transforms into a social problem, rejection, isolation, lack of opportunities, invisibility. The cruelest part is that the person then uses these external reactions as further proof that they really are not capable. No one takes me seriously anyway, and thus the cycle closes perfectly. This is the power of self-efficacy. It silently shapes not only your results, but also how you are treated. It's not about thinking positive. It's about what you communicate to the world without saying a word. But how exactly are these signals transmitted? And why, even when you try to hide your insecurities, do they seem to seep through the cracks of your body language, your voice, and your presence? This is what we will analyze in the next part: how the lack of conviction becomes visible, and why you are not being judged unfairly. You are merely projecting your disbelief, and the world is reflecting it back. Many people believe that insecurity is something that can be hidden, that by wearing the right clothes, rehearsing a speech, or smiling just right, they can appear confident, even if they are being eaten away by silent doubts inside. But Albert Bandura identified a deeper and more uncomfortable phenomenon. Insecurity does not need to be verbalized to be perceived. It seeps into body language, voice, speech rhythm, micro-expressions, and even the absence of presence. A lack of self-efficacy transforms into an invisible magnetic field that repels opportunities, respect, and connection, even when we don't say a word. The human body communicates all the time, and what it conveys goes far beyond conscious intentions. People with low self-efficacy often display closed postures, contained movements, avoidance of eye contact, and a subtle tendency to withdraw, physically and emotionally. They speak hesitantly, with excessive pauses, with tones that rise at the end of sentences, as if they are asking for approval or permission. They apologize even before making a mistake. They laugh nervously to relieve the discomfort of their own presence. And, most devastatingly, their words contradict their energy. Imagine someone saying, "I can try to lead this project," but looking down, crossing their arms, and speaking as if they are already apologizing for a failure that hasn't even happened yet. The content of the speech may seem confident, but the way it is delivered betrays the real belief behind the mask, and the unconscious of others picks up on this dissonance immediately. Bandura observed that these signs of uncertainty function as silent transmissions of self-sabotage. The individual, without realizing it, sends a subliminal message to the environment: "I don't trust myself." And the environment responds in the same frequency: "Then why should I trust you?" This creates a devastating, self-fulfilling prophecy. You project doubt. Others pick up on it and react with coldness, resistance, or disbelief. You interpret this as unfair rejection. Your belief in your incapacity strengthens even more. People with high self-efficacy, on the other hand, transmit confidence even in silence. not because they are arrogant, but because their bodies do not need to justify themselves all the time. Their posture is open, their gestures are assertive, their voice carries conviction, not because they rehearsed it, but because they genuinely believe in what they are doing. It is this deeply rooted belief that the body expresses. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You are training the people around you to believe in you or doubt you all the time. With every conversation, every meeting, every new opportunity, you are emitting signals about your competence, even unintentionally. The way you enter a room, how you hold eye contact, how you occupy space, everything communicates. This means that it is not enough to just have good ideas or be a good person. If you do not convey conviction, the world will not trust you, not out of cruelty, but out of survival instinct. In competitive, insecure, or overloaded environments, people do not have time to decipher your intention. They respond to what they feel. But what if it were possible to turn this game around? What if you could train your body, mind, and behavior to authentically convey confidence? And more importantly, if confidence can be built, what exactly are the elements that compose it? In the next part, we will explore the 4 scientific sources that Bandura identified as pillars for building real self-efficacy, and why they are much more effective than any positive thinking formula. Get ready to enter the practical and transformative part of this journey. Now that we understand how self-efficacy silently shapes our reality and influences how others treat us, the inevitable question arises: how is true confidence built? The answer lies in one of Albert Bandura's greatest legacies. Instead of promising magical solutions or relying on self-help slogans, he accurately mapped the 4 real and proven sources of self-efficacy, solid pillars upon which anyone can gradually build an authentic belief in their own ability. These sources do not involve empty positive thinking, nor do they require you to pretend to be confident. They are practical, measurable, and deeply human. Let's explore each of them. 1. Mastery experiences. This is, according to Bandura, the most powerful source of self-efficacy. It is what most naturally convinces the brain that we are capable. The direct experience of success. When you face a real challenge, no matter how small, and overcome it, that victory becomes concrete evidence of competence. The brain registers, "I did it." And this record carries more weight than any praise, any advice, any external motivation. But be careful. We are not talking about great achievements. The secret lies in the small victories accumulated. Speaking in public for 2 minutes, completing a simple project, resolving a difficult conflict. With each achievement, self-efficacy grows. With each overcoming, the brain creates a new parameter of capability. The problem is that most people ignore these small successes or undervalue them, waiting for a big moment of validation that never comes. 2. Social modeling. The second source is observing people similar to you, succeeding in tasks you consider difficult. When you see someone you identify with, in age, context, background, or style, facing something challenging and winning, your brain receives a powerful message. If they succeeded, maybe I can too. This form of observational learning activates mirrored areas in the brain, allowing you to internalize the other person's experience as a kind of mental rehearsal. That's why environments with diverse references, accessible mentors, or support groups are so effective. Unfortunately, many people only surround themselves with examples that are too distant, idealized, unattainable, which, instead of inspiring, paralyzes. Bandura argues that the model needs to be credible and close to the observer's reality for the effect to be real. 3. Verbal persuasion. We have all been marked at some point by a phrase said by someone we trusted. A teacher who said, "You have a knack for this." A friend who stated, "You don't realize how good you are." A mentor who looked into your eyes and said, "You are ready." This is verbal persuasion. It is not flattery. It is not cheap motivation. It is credible, specific, and consistent feedback from someone who knows your journey and your ability. This type of reinforcement does not create skills out of nowhere, but it can be the deciding factor between trying or giving up, between persevering or abandoning. And when the result comes, even if small, the mastery experience is activated. Verbal persuasion, therefore, acts as a catalyst for the next step. 4. Physiological and emotional states. Many people confuse nervousness with incapacity. They feel their heart racing, their mouth drying, their hands sweating, and think, "This means I'm not good enough." Bandura taught that this interpretation is a fatal mistake. The same physiological signals we feel in the face of fear can also be present in moments of excitement, readiness, and focus. The difference lies in how we interpret these sensations. An athlete feels their heart race before a competition and interprets it as adrenaline. A musician feels butterflies before a show and calls it energy. A beginner feels the same thing and thinks they are about to fail. Learning to reinterpret physiological states as a natural part of the process is a key skill to strengthen self-efficacy. These 4 pillars function as interconnected gears. Small victories reinforce belief. Good models expand the vision of possibility. Consistent feedback sustains effort, and emotional regulation keeps the system functioning even under pressure. When applied together, they build a confidence that is not fragile, nor dependent on others' opinions, but solid, progressive, and true. But the journey doesn't end here, because building self-efficacy is just the beginning. The question now is, what happens when you truly start to believe in yourself? How does this change not only the way you act, but also how the world begins to react to your presence? This is exactly what we will explore in the next part. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. If low self-efficacy creates a vicious cycle of doubt, withdrawal, and failure, the opposite is also true and equally powerful. Albert Bandura demonstrated that when a person begins to develop a strong belief in their own abilities, a new system forms, a cycle of conviction and positive reinforcement that gradually transforms not only their behavior, but also how they are seen, treated, and integrated into the world. This dynamic is known as the virtuous cycle of self-efficacy, and it is one of the most transformative forces within social psychology. The cycle begins with a simple element: enough belief to act. When you believe you can perform a certain action, even with uncertainties, you decide to try. But this attempt is not superficial. It comes loaded with engagement, persistence, and a willingness to face obstacles. This alone differentiates the behavior of someone with self-efficacy from someone who is just testing with fear. And in most cases, this intentional action produces a superior outcome because it was done with presence, not self-protection. And then the cycle starts to turn. You believe you can, you act with more effort, you achieve better results, your belief strengthens, you take on greater challenges. Others notice your confidence, you are treated with more respect, openness, and opportunity. This positive spiral not only expands your chances of success, but also profoundly modifies the social environment around you. People who demonstrate conviction, not arrogance, but quiet conviction, come to be perceived as trustworthy, competent, natural leaders. Doors open faster. Conversations are more receptive. Opportunities arise more frequently. And not because the world has become fairer, but because you change the signal you transmit to the world. You stopped asking for permission and started to take up space. This is the power of self-efficacy. It alters your social energy. And social energy is everything. It defines who is heard in a meeting, who gets promoted, who is remembered when a position opens up, who is respected even in silence. Human beings respond to certainty with adherence and to doubt with hesitation. And as we saw earlier, certainty does not need to be absolute. It just needs to be real enough to generate continuous action. But there is another effect of this cycle that is even deeper. It reconfigures your identity. Each time you act despite fear and achieve results, you stop seeing yourself as fragile, limited, or insufficient. Your own self-concept begins to change. You stop defining yourself by past failures or by the opinions you received in the past. And over time, you begin to act not out of compensation or need for approval, but for expansion. You start to operate at a new level of consciousness, the one in which you allow yourself to occupy larger spaces. But Bandura also warned of an uncomfortable truth. Most people never experience this virtuous cycle. They spend their lives trapped in the opposite cycle, that of doubt, withdrawal, and the eternal wait for external validation. They only feel prepared when the environment says it's all right. They only take risks when there is no more risk. They only speak when called upon. And in this process, they live a life below what they could live. Self-efficacy, therefore, is not just a psychological detail. It is one of the main determinants of human destiny. It defines not only what you do, but also what you believe you deserve. And no one can externally sustain a life that internally they believe they do not deserve to live for long. But here is the most important turning point. If this cycle can be initiated from a simple decision to act despite doubt, then the key is in your hands. The question that remains is, what is preventing you from starting now? Albert Bandura left us an undeniable legacy. The conviction that the way you see yourself defines not only what you attempt, but also what you achieve. And most importantly, how the world responds to your existence. Throughout this video, you saw that confidence is not a divine gift, nor an innate quality that some have and others do not. Confidence is built, it is trained, it is cultivated like a muscle. And just like any muscle, it atrophies when not used and grows when challenged. But here is the hardest truth of all, and perhaps the most liberating. No one will believe in you more than you believe in yourself. The world will not grant you permission. It will not hand you confidence out of pity, nor will it respect you out of compassion. The world reacts to what you emit. And if what you project is hesitation, doubt, and insecurity, that is exactly what you will receive in return. Closed doors, voices louder than yours, gazes that pierce through you as if you weren't even there. This is not cruelty. It is reflection. You are not being unfairly judged. You are communicating with every gesture, every word, and every avoided decision that you do not believe in yourself. And the world, relentless and honest, is simply agreeing with you. But this can change from now on, not with motivational speeches, but with action. Start small. Win battles that only you will see. Change the way you interpret the butterflies in your stomach, mistakes, the silence of others. Accumulate evidence. Build, every day, a new identity. One that is not based on waiting for the world to see you, but on becoming impossible to ignore. You have two choices. Continue feeding the cycle of doubt, hoping that someday, someone, something, a boss, a partner, a miracle, will tell you that you are capable. Or you can break that cycle yourself with small, consistent, and intentional actions until the reflection changes and the world begins to see what you have finally decided to see. Someone capable, prepared, and necessary. And now, I want to hear from you. In the comments, write, what will be your first small victory starting today? It can be something simple, but it needs to be real. A choice, an action, a change in posture. And if this video made you rethink something about yourself, don't stop here. The next video is important, perhaps even more than this one. The next step is waiting for you. See you there.